You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Hello, I'm Stephen Willis, host of the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, joined in a second by Brian Smith, the Locked On recruiting expert, and he is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the college recruiting sponsor across the Locked On Podcast Network. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. Now, Brian, busy weekend for Ole Miss football. They got a couple of commits. And we're going to start with somebody that is your direction away. He's from Daphne, Alabama. Is a defensive lineman named Talib Graham. Now, when I look at his video, I see that, this is an explosive type defensive lineman that is tailor-made for that jack position. And honestly, he reminds me a little bit of DJ Holmes from a couple of years ago.
His first step's tremendous, isn't it, Stephen?
Mm-hmm.
He gets off the ball in a hurry. He is not afraid to go with a two-hand bull rush or dip his shoulder, go around. He's got a little bit of game, if you will. And above all else, he's just a natural athlete. He plays in a down position at his high school. I don't know how he'll be used at the next level. He could stand up and might play a little down too. Depends on what schemes Golding wants to use with him. Mm-hmm. But he's explosive enough to play in the SEC. That's the bottom line. So now it's just about teaching him different ways to drop into coverage on zone fire and different things like that just to enhance his game. But the physical tools are certainly there.
How does he differ as a defensive line prospect from the commitment they got from Louisiana a couple months back?
I just think Graham's aggressiveness is so unique. Like his first step on every play, his goal is to be
explosive. Yeah.
And it's almost to the point, like, I wonder how often he's going to get screened early in his career. They're going to try to take advantage of that, like wham blocks, things like that, to try to like make him think. Because right now he's just like, let's just get to the backfield and what happens is what happens. He's pretty simplistic in that goal. And at the high school level, he overwhelms people with size and athleticism, which is typical. Ole Miss should be getting kids like that. But I mean, the aggressiveness to shoot a gap, man, that's the thing. Like with him is like really rare because he doesn't dilly-dally with anything. I would take him in a heartbeat, don't get me wrong. But I'm curious, like how many other guys look at it like he does, because he's so unique with that.
You know, Houston Nutt, when he was at Ole Miss back in like 2008, 2009, he had a player that came up there and was like, hey, we can just have him. We just make it work. We're going to play cat coverage with him. And it's just like, see that cat, cover him. This is a kind of situation with an athletic defensive lineman to where, hey, there's the quarterback, go eat. That's kind of what they're doing right now, right?
That with that kid, it is. I mean, Perkins and different guys like that, the kid at LSU and stuff. There's certain guys like you're not going to block them very long. You're just not. You know what I mean? And when you get somebody like that, don't make it complicated, which, by the way, LSU did last year for Perkins, and it was a disaster. Make it simple, not harder. I think Graham is a guy that eventually could play some linebacker, but let him learn the playbook through osmosis instead of forcing him. Coaches hate it when guys don't know the whole playbook. Hey, dummy, it's not how it works. Let the guy do what he does. He's a young, healthy guy. He gets to the quarterback. That's fine. So I hope they don't overcomplicate it with Talib or anybody else, for that matter, that comes in that's a natural pass rusher, because they'll pick up the playbook in time, just rotate the guys and let them go after the quarterback.
Yeah, we interviewed Suntaran Perkins a couple of weeks ago and asked him what they were doing, because we thought, after seeing what they did with Harold Perkins a year ago at LSU, is Suntaran Perkins going to move back and they're going to force him into linebacker? Suntaran says no. He's playing a good bit with his hand on the ground for using his athleticism at the moment, and he's going to slowly work his way up to be a middle linebacker type player.
That's the better way to do it. Middle linebacker is hard, man. Mentally, it's 10 times harder than it's physically. And you're taking on guards. But if you don't know how to help set up everybody in front of you and realign guys when they shift and they motion, then it doesn't matter how talented you are, because you're going to be out positioned and you get smoked. So that's why that position is not a good one for a freshman or sophomore. You need to recruit linebackers every year and play junior seniors and fifth-year seniors. And edge guys, that's one of the few spots a freshman can come in and at least be a pass rusher on third downs, let Talib go out and do that.
We're going to change gears just a little bit and go over to the offensive side of the ball. The other commitment that Ole Miss got was also from the state of Alabama. Well, sort of. He's actually a Gaucher kid, but that's another story altogether. But it's Dillon Alfred from Saraland High School in the Mobile area. This is a situation. I looked at his video, and the first thing that popped out to me, this is a stockier kid than I imagined whenever I was thinking about this commitment. And there might be a little bit of now, this is an over comp, but the physicality inside receiver as opposed to an Elijah Moore type or Caden Lee type in shots.
Yeah. It's interesting with Dillon because he was at the Orlando Under Armour event and was really, really good. I didn't know, he was the only kid from Alabama there. So like Talib is from the Mobile area, and he made a lot of guys look bad. And Florida's got plenty of DBs, as you're well aware, Stephen. And runs routes well. He's well coached. He plays at Saraland's, arguably the best program in the state of Alabama. And he's also a guy, most importantly, yes, sir, no, sir, very coachable, does all the right things, good kid. So Ole Miss picked up a player that's good on and off the field that kind of fits their offense. And he's really hungry. I don't think he's ranked where he should be. And I think a lot of people around him know that, including him. He's motivated. So Ole Miss is going to have something to work with.
Yeah, and everybody asked the question in my comments. In this video, somebody would ask the question, what does this mean for Caleb Cunningham? And the answer to that is absolutely nothing. Ole Miss is still going to shoot their shot with Caleb Cunningham. But Dillon Alfred, he was coached by Mike Espy and Shay Hodge with the Mesh Academy in Jackson, Mississippi. That's his private trainers. Mike Espy, as we know, is an alum of Ole Miss. Shay Hodge, alum of Ole Miss. So Dillon Alfred kind of had an in, and I'm not saying they did anything like that, but almost by osmosis, Dillon Alfred, with what Ole Miss has done with wide receivers in the league, they had the advantage in the state of the Mississippi for this player, I think.
Well, like your point about Cunningham, by the way, they would take him if they had 4 receivers committed, so it is what it is. He's a very special player. But Dillon Alfred's a kid that he can make his own way too. He can beat one-on-one coverage. He can beat man coverage. He can beat zone coverage. He's a very intelligent kid. Getting him, adding him to the roster is just going to be another bullet in the gun for Lane Kiffin and his play calling.
Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first and listen every day. When we come back, we are going to tell you about the transfer portal running backs that Ole Miss might be in the mix for, and kind of go back and get a high school look at them and pick Brian's brain a little bit about that. But first, I do want to let you know that this show is brought to you by the Gametime app. Gametime is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets easier and faster. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch, and with killer last-minute deals all in prices, views from your seat, and the lowest price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. I'm going to the Detroit-Tampa Bay game on April 22nd. I bought tickets on the Gametime app. And the reason I did that is because I could go in there and see exactly what it was. One of my favorite things to see in an MLB game is that sweet left-handed swing from the batter's box. So I wanted to sit in a place that I could maximize that view. But they also have a lowest price guarantee. They have ticket coverage in case you lose your job. Just take the guesswork out of buying tickets and use Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay's Motors has got you covered for everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's guaranteed fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every single time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. And with all the parts you need and the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay's guaranteed fit is only available to U.S. customers. Also, are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day and you have to turn down the volume with all the screaming and yelling and shouting? Make that switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24-hour streaming channel program for you every single day to bring you the biggest stories without all of that screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're here with Brian Smith, and we are getting educated on the new commitments that Ole Miss just had in the first segment, but we also are going to learn a little bit about the transfer portal that opens up tomorrow, and we're starting to hear a lot of noise about running backs and Ole Miss maybe recruiting them, and maybe Lane Kiffin is going to do with the running back room what he did with the quarterback room a year ago. And let's start with Henry Parrish, because you do have a knowledge of that Miami program. What do we need to know about Henry?
I think he's a kid that has been kind of overlooked a little bit by Miami fans. He had a pretty good couple years there, but he got bypassed by Mark Fletcher Jr. some last year, who's going to be an NFL running back, bigger back. And I just think he felt a little undervalued because they have other guys, and he's going back to the portal, and I assume it's going to be Ole Miss where he ends up and plays and all that. I'm curious how they'll use him, because I think he's actually a better fit at Ole Miss, because they'll use the ball in the flat, throwing it to him, and he makes people miss pretty easily. But really runs hard, man. Just needs to stay healthy. He's 190, 195 pounds, yoked, but that's kind of where his body is, and he needs to be like the second runner. He can help Ole Miss in a lot of ways, though, where Miami didn't really use the running backs in the passing game as much as they should have.
Yeah, that was the first name that popped up for Ole Miss that came out. The list got bigger and bigger as we went on, and we started hearing about Dallan Hayden from Ohio State going into the portal, and Ole Miss being a potential landing spot for him. What do Ole Miss fans need to know about Dallan Hayden?
He's a kid that I really loved when he came out of Memphis a few years ago. He's a nice kid, too. Really, really good at making the first guy miss, and has tremendous vision. Played quite a bit at Ohio State, but they just got a crowded room, kind of like Miami. I was a little more surprised that he left, but then again, Alfred left. He was the running back coach there. Whatever reason, it didn't work out, because they just brought in Carlos Lachlan from Oregon, who's a tremendous running back coach at Ohio State, but whatever. This is an opportunity for him to go somewhere and make some noise. LSU needs running backs. Ole Miss could use another one. A lot of teams could. I'm curious to see where he goes, because he can play. I think he's got a chance to eventually get paid to play. So it was a little more curious to me that when he walked into the portal.
Yeah, and it's an interesting situation, because all of these running backs are like 190, 195, 200 pounds. All of Ole Miss's running backs that they have, and all of these, both Henry Parrish and Dallan Hayden, they kind of fit that mold as well. Now, another back that has popped in there that Ole Miss has been listing as a top 5 with is Damien Martinez from Oregon State. And this guy's a dude. He's, in my opinion, a top 5 running back in the entire country, regardless of classification, regardless of portal and all of that stuff. Ole Miss popped up on that list. Michigan State's on that list too. Now, that's a Jonathan Smith guy. That's where Jonathan Smith is coaching now. And he's a Texas kid, which tells me you need to watch out for Texas and A&M as well, with as talented as running back is. But have you heard anything about this back?
Well, I mean, I know about him just from watching him. He's so good, it's not even funny. Not many guys that weigh 220 could move like he does. He'll make guys miss like Dallan Hayden does, but with 20 more pounds on him. And he's also a kid that's got pretty decent speed. He was taking chunks out of Oregon's defense, etc. He's averaged 6.1 yards a carry his first 2 years in college football. Good on the goal line, can catch, green game. He's an NFL starting running back. So, I mean, he can change your offense in a hurry. Very few guys they were going to get were going to be as close as Quinshawn. I would take Marino or take Martinez over Quinshawn if I had to take one of the two. I think Quinshawn's an NFL back too. So that puts things in perspective. I don't know how you could go wrong if you're Ole Miss and you got any of the three, but if I had to pick one, I would take this kid.
Yeah, and if you look at it, the way I did a video, I think on Thursday or something like that, that I mentioned that Ole Miss would have a national championship level roster if they got this kid, because this is the kid that substantially fills a role. what few holes that they have on offense, this would fill that role. And that is having a thumper, a potential every down type running back. And you could use him in short yardage and things like that to kind of do some of the stuff that Quinshawn was able to do.
That's exactly right. And he'd be good in pass protection for Jackson Dart. He's got bigger and more powerful over his couple of years in Corvallis. This is about as home run as it gets in the portal.
And everybody said that the transfer portal opening tomorrow is going to be some of the most ludicrous stuff we have seen. What's the most asinine rumors you've heard?
Talking about guys getting $1 million or more. Like, the numbers are always inflated. Mm-hmm. And like, let's not kid ourselves. They're being like, who enters the portal is not the deal, because kids are getting recruited into the portal. It's the problem with, there's no nice way to say this. You can't have kids being able to be openly eligible immediately, because then you get this. There's no fix. And I know kids want to be eligible to transfer, but creates other problems. So the money thing is just wild. I've heard different things. Somebody put out a tweet about this. Teams that are going to spend the most in the portal. How in the hell would you know how much other schools are going to spend? Yeah. I mean, that was one of the worst tweets ever. But the schools that are considered NIL, like, Miami has a ton of money. They go out and spend some. They need a back. Maybe they try to get Damien Martinez.
Yeah, he's on the list. He was on the top 5 as well.
Yeah, so I'd imagine that there's going to be some crazy stories after, but like, especially a team like Ole Miss that's like on the cusp of a top 5 team this year. I don't think they're top 5 yet, but they're right there. You could make that argument. You put Martinez on it, you can beat anybody in a game, because he can be your 4-minute offense guy. He can be in the backfield if you need to go 2-minute offense and just pass protect. Having guys like that is so valuable to your roster.
Yeah, and it's just crazy. I think Pete Thamel posted out, it's like, hey, Martinez was slated to make over $400,000 this year at Oregon State. Yeah, that tweet came out.
Pretty good coin. That's pretty good coin.
And he talked about that. First of all NLI deals have NDAs attached, which mean nobody is risking their money to tell a reporter how much that is. So it's all guessing and ways that it gets done. Now, that also tells me that Martinez is probably going to command close to 7 figures, like legitimately at the next level.
Because the schools bidding for him will be ones that are trying to win a title, so they'll spend a little extra. Kind of like the trade deadline for the Tigers or anybody else getting a pitcher if they can make the playoffs. You give 2 pitching prospects instead of 1 because this is our short window. We got to do it.
Yeah.
It's supply and demand, brother.
Yeah, it's the way it is. And personally, the next 45 days or so, I love it, because my content and everything, I'm going to have content at the wazoo, because the transfer portal, that's what it does. It gives fodder. Yeah. I mean, I've done the videos though this week, like 4 videos over 2,000 views. And this is during the off season. And that's what it's all the transfer portal.
That's exactly right. And the transfer portal just intrigues people. So I get tired of it because it's so wild and willy. I can't prepare for anything, but at least we can react to stuff. And that's what podcasts are for in the first place, Stephen.
Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first and listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Brian Smith, the Florida football scout, Locked On's own recruiting expert. Thank you very much for joining the show, and we'll talk to you next week, bud.
Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it.